The notion of a contested convention at the Democratic National Convention sounds a little less likely. However, Bernie Sanders was asked about what he would do if Joe Biden wins the plurality of pledged delegates, but not the majority necessary to win the nomination. Now, famously, every single candidate, including all those who dropped out, indicated that they would not give the nomination to the individual with the plurality. But what would Bernie Sanders do? Take a look.
It turns out that Vice President Biden is going to have more delegates than you do heading into the convention. Will you drop out?
Of course, going to drop out. He will win. I mean, we'll run through. I suspect we will run through the process. I think people have a right to vote. But if Biden walks into the convention or at the end of the process has more votes than me, he's the winner.
And that's true whether or not he has a majority or just a plurality.
Absolutely.
Yeah, nice framing there, Rachel. I mean, she started that question out by just assuming that Biden's gonna have more delegates than him going into the convention. I mean, right now, he has more delegates than Bernie Sanders. There's no indication that it's impossible for Bernie to close that gap and to have the lead by the time they get to the convention. But I don't know, am I wrong here?
Yeah, no, you're not at all wrong. And first of all, I wanna give credit to Bernie Sanders for being principled on this. He's saying, if I come in with the lead, even if it's a plurality, I should get it. But if Biden comes in with the lead, even if it's just a plurality, Biden should get it, not me. Now, has anyone else been consistent like that? No. They all, when Bernie was leading, everybody's like, oh, plurality doesn't mean anything, doesn't mean anything, doesn't mean anything, right? Biden takes the lead, they're like, oh, that's it, plurality. Of course, obviously. Hey, Bernie, why don't you drop out now? You have no chance, why don't you drop out? Wait a minute, what happened to, even if Bernie wins plurality, Biden and everyone else should stay in.
Right.
Right?
I mean, it's a double standard, obviously.
How do you not see that double standard? They said that if Bernie has the plurality, he shouldn't win anyway. That Biden should stay in all the way and then rob him at the convention. Now that Biden has taken a minuscule lead, they're like, Bernie, don't even do any of the rest of the states. Don't go to the convention. Don't ask for delegates, drop out of it. Come on. So look, I think I'm a little at fault here in regards to Rachel Maddow, which is that since I knew her before and we worked together before and she was very good to me when I first went to MSNBC, I've held my fire, and that's not fair to you guys. I listened to a large portion of that interview and it was terrible. Okay, so number one, you're gonna lose. So what are you gonna do when you lose? Okay, you just saw it with your own eyes. Just because you put it in a more sophisticated way doesn't make it any better. That's still your framing. On an Obama gotcha question, which was actually the least offensive of all of them, she framed it with like, oh, I'm such a liberal and I want liberals to win and I'm excited by you, but you had an ad with Obama in it, and Obama, come on, are you saying he's the establishment? Come on, go ahead, criticize Obama. I got it. We all know that gotcha question. Every hack on cable news asked that same question. Oh, I bet if I can go to Bernie into criticizing Obama, that'll make him more likely to lose. Rachel, you don't know that?
Keep going.
You don't know
keep
that?
Going. This is
but
good.
actually, the worst one was, she asked about, oh, you're not getting enough of the African American votes. Now, wait a minute, Rachel, you could be doing segments about how Joe Biden has lied about his civil rights record over and over and over and over again, pretending that he was at boycotts, sit-ins, churches, protests that he was never at. Have you done your long exposés on Biden on that and saying how unacceptable he is and how those are stolen valor, potentially racist? Yep. Did you talk about how Biden
struggles to get the Latino vote, right?
Yeah,
but, who cares about that? Right?
Yeah, that's a great point. I want to get back to that in a second. And then how Obama picked Biden, not because he was great with African Americans. Obama didn't need help with that. He picked him because he was more likely to get white voters. Why? Because he was against busing, he was for the crime bill that imprisoned millions of African Americans, etc. Instead of doing that, oh, you didn't get enough percentage of the African American vote in South Carolina, etc. So she asked 3 or 4 times about that, framing it like, not only that African Americans don't like you, but there must be a secret reason why they don't like. That's the inference. Rachel, don't pretend that that's not your inference. That's the inference every single mainstream media person has. Why don't African Americans like Bernie Sanders? No, as Bernie explained in his answer, Biden was Obama's vice president. Yes, that's gonna give him some advantage with African Americans. That's the most obvious thing in the world. And Rachel, you don't know that? You don't know that being Obama's vice president might give him an advantage with African American voters? Please tell me you know that. So framing it, insisting and asking over and over and over again makes it seem like Bernie has some sort of racial problem, which he does not have. In fact, there was one person involved in the civil rights movement, and it wasn't Joe Biden, it was Bernie Sanders. But did you insist on that and telling your audience? No, you didn't. And finally, now I didn't see Rachel do this in the interview, but I've seen other outlets say this over and over again. And by omission, she did it, to your point, Anna. Everybody's like, oh, Bernie didn't win enough votes among African Americans in South Carolina. It's over, racial problems, right? Is everybody doing the same thing to Joe Biden? He won almost no votes among Latinos in Nevada. What, Latinos don't count? Did anyone ask Bernie Sanders, how in the world did you get all of those Latinos, such an overwhelming majority of Latinos in Nevada to vote for you? I guess you must be incredibly popular with Latinos and Joe Biden. Why do Latinos hate you? Right. No, never, never, never.
You know, it's ironically, while trying to imply that Bernie Sanders must be doing something that rubs the African American community the wrong way, people like Rachel Maddow in the media do something that I would argue is incredibly insensitive and I just think ignorant of certain demographics, right? So the Black community is not a monolith. They're not all the same. And they people in the media keep treating everyone in the African American community as if they all have the exact same political ideology. There's a pretty significant difference between older Black voters and younger Black voters. Older Black voters who definitely turned out for Joe Biden tend to be a little more conservative. So they prefer a more moderate candidate, okay? And by the way, anyone who goes after those voters and says, oh, they're voting for Biden because they're ignorant, this and that, you're not helping either, okay? This is the candidate that they feel is gonna best represent them. I don't think that it helps anyone's case by calling anyone ignorant, but I do think it is ignorant to assume that everyone who's Black or everyone who's Latino is gonna vote a certain way. No, there are differences even among that demographic, and age has a lot to do with it as well.
Yeah, you could ask Joe Biden, how come you do terribly among young African Americans? So, but one last thing on the hypocrisy. They always ask Bernie Sanders, well, are you saying that African American voters, that this is a particularly odious trick, are part of the establishment? Because you criticize the establishment, but African American voters largely voted for Joe Biden in South Carolina. So are you insulting African Americans by calling them part of that establishment? It's a nice little rhetorical trick, but let's flip it on its head. So Biden constantly criticizes Sanders as an unrealistic progressive who can't get anything done. But Latinos vote overwhelmingly for Bernie Sanders. Joe Biden, are you calling Latinos unrealistic radicals? Is that what you're doing? That seems incredibly offensive to Latinos. Isn't it funny that they do one, but never, ever the other?
I definitely don't find it funny, but I get what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, it's just, it's frustrating because people keep treating this election, this primary race, as if all of these candidates have been treated the same. They've been given similar opportunities. They've been handled the same way in these interviews. But I think that it's pretty clear that throughout this entire primary, there have been moderate candidates, and it's switched from one to the next, right? That have been propped up by the mainstream press. And you're seeing it right now with Biden. And the thing that makes it even more infuriating with Biden is he is the most vulnerable candidate up against Donald Trump, right? With the Ukraine accusations. I get it. People think that that's unfair to bring up because of course the right wing is gonna use conspiracy theories against Biden. But his son did work on that gas board, right? And so that's gas company board, I should say. And it's an issue, it's a vulnerability. There's that. There's the fact that he keeps making these giant mistakes on the debate stage and the campaign trail, which allows for the Trump campaign to put together these lengthy compilation videos of Joe Biden saying things that make you question his mental capacity to be president. It's what are you guys doing? Do you want to beat Trump or not? If so, why would you prop up the most vulnerable candidate? I don't get it.
And lastly on this, we're walking right into a disaster. Biden is gonna get pummeled by the Republicans, just absolutely pulverized. They're gonna take every clip of him not knowing which state he's in, not knowing what he's saying,
not knowing the Declaration of Independence.
They're gonna say, you show it 1 billion times, maybe literally 1 billion times on social media, mainstream media. The mainstream media will also flip on Biden after, oh, we have to be fair, and they'll play those over and over again. They will not, under penalty of law, talk about his potential senility during the primary election, but the minute it becomes a general election, they're gonna say there's something wrong with Joe Biden. Everybody agrees there's something wrong with Joe Biden. We're walking right off that cliff. Then Trump will win. What on God's green earth are you guys doing? So the guys who said they want to beat Trump so bad, turns out, as we always suspected, no, they'd rather beat Bernie Sanders than Donald Trump. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.